Hello, Void. Well, we did it. Our first year anniversary. Well, we did, 160 some videos last year. So, let's see if we can do even more than that this year. And, towards the end of the month, I'm going to be making a few comments to that effect. But, I've got a whole month binge to go through first. So, last year, I watched one movie a day, and to the point of watching movies I'd never seen before, and mainly focused on movies I'd either been meaning to see, had heard was really good, or otherwise had been on my radar for some time. Hi. Yeah. This year, I'm doing pretty much near opposite. I'm going fully random, no decision on what I'm watching. The only criteria is I can't have reviewed it before. So, what I'm doing is playing streaming service Roulette, alternating between Netflix, Tubi, and Shudder. So, largely that's going to be, if there's no decent random option, just clicking and loading up the first horror section and seeing what's there. Not sure I'm going to work Shudder yet. Figure that out on day 3. So, today I was going to start with Tubi, but I usually do a lot of my watching through the PS3, which apparently Tubi actually discontinued its service for back on January this year. So, wasn't able to do that. And I could have kicked up a different system to load up Tubi or on the computer, but I already had the thing turned on, so I just hit up Netflix. So it'll be Netflix, Tubi, Shudder. So, and Netflix, I tried at first, saying the random shuffle, watch something, and that just took me right to Squid Game, which I do want to see, yes, but don't really have time for a series right now. And I had a feeling that was going to be the case of it just putting on whatever's most popular, so hardly very random. Anyway, so what went to horror. The first thing that popped up today was Hush. Now, I've actually seen Hush before, once, and I'm pretty sure it was through Netflix. So usually those ones shift the ones you've seen towards the bottom. Netflix is going to be kind of less randomized, just whatever happens to be in order. I'm trying not to look too far ahead. So we'll just see what comes up. Tubi, whenever I loaded it up, it never keeps them in the same order, so I have no idea what I'm going to be watching for those ones. Like I said, Shudder, I'm going to pick a random category and see what's first in it. Anyway, Hush. I did enjoy Hush the first time I saw it. I still enjoy Hush. It's got to be one of the better slasher films to come out of the last, what, 5 years ago is about when it came out, so, but I give it back in the last 10 years or so. It is a very well done film. And, well, it is done by one of my favorite directors, Mike Flanagan. I've commented of my enjoyment of Flanagan's work back on my Oculus review back in, I guess I would have been in January, as I was reviewing some of my favorites at the time. Now, this one, Flanagan wrote it, well, co-wrote it, and directed it. And Kate Siegel was the lead actress, and co-wrote it. And this was about the time Flanagan and Siegel were actually dating, and they ended up getting married just before this movie came out. So, I guess they were script writing for dating. Well, hey, whatever works for you. And yeah, it's the performances that really carry this film, particularly Kate Siegel. I really like her in whatever I've seen her in, so, which is probably not as much as I'd like, but loved her in Hill House, and I'm sure I've seen her in other things. It's just escaping me off the top of my head. I haven't actually yet gotten around to seeing, oh, what was it? Gerald's Game yet, but most other things I know I've seen her in a few other things. Regardless. So, Hush. It's mostly at its core, it is a standard slasher movie. But this one does it a little bit up. This movie came out back in 2016. And its main premise is Kate Siegel is an author who is deaf and mute, and has been since the age of 13. So, we spend the first bit of the movie just kind of getting to know her and her life and seeing things from her perspective. First, it does some very good work with that because it doesn't just outright tell you what it says, it just shows her cooking. And then eventually, it just kind of camera zooms in kind of up towards her point of view, and then just the sound just slowly fades away, and it kind of gets the impression that she's deaf. And it kind of goes from there and kind of takes its time showing you how she lives her life. A lot of the things that are required for her to get by, like how she uses FaceTime in order to actually make phone calls, or a few other things for how she does things. Her reliance on her laptop and her phone for communication with the outside world. Particularly since she's kind of living out in the isolated woods with just one neighbor nearby. Also, it shows her doing like a Skype, things like that. So her reliance on technology. So when everything starts going wrong and all those tools are taken away from her, she has to learn to cope and quick without being able to find a way to call for help, which is even more difficult for someone in her position. Now, they do a good job setting her up as a character, and like a character with these conditions can normally be portrayed as kind of the damsel in distress or a bit defenseless, but she starts in that phase, but she quickly picks up the slack and begins realizing that no, she has to fight back in order to survive this night. So, it has kind of some elements of The Strangers and a little bit of You're Next kind of mixed in there. So, both movies I enjoyed. And I do particularly enjoy the killer's first appearance, as you pretty much just see her kind of cleaning up after her cooking disaster, and when her friend just kind of runs up and starts banging on the windows and while being stalked, and she just can't hear it, so she doesn't realize that the scene of horror is playing out just behind her. It's kind of a chilling scene to see. And then it pretty much becomes a cat and mouse between the killer and her. Masked killer armed with a crossbow, who just seems to be hunting people just to do it. So, this movie A Quiet Place had a very similar kind of gimmick for kind of making it a very quiet, atmospheric movie, but this one actually beat Quiet Place out by about 2 years. So, there are very different styles, so I don't think Quiet Place is really pulling too much from Hush, but some parallels did kind of pop up to me, but since that one, in Quiet Place, if you make a noise, you're pretty much going to die. In her case, well, she can't hear anything, but noise becomes, well, a danger for her also, because the killer can hear anything she does, but she can't hear the killer. But she does turn that on him eventually by using noises to distract him, or being able to ignore certain other very loud noises. Now, the gore effects in this are quite minimal, but they're effective. And I will say they do a good job portraying characters like reacting to pain and whatnot in a realistic fashion. Like, unlike some other slasher movies where the final girl just keeps getting beat to hell but is still able to just throw down. No. Her character, Maddie, when she gets shot, by a crossbow bolt, she feels that she then is with a limp for the rest of the movie. And her hand gets crushed, so then she's out of that. And those injuries don't just miraculously heal or slowly get better, she's actually slowly starting to bleed out, so she knows she can't just sit and wait for help. And she's getting progressively weaker as the movie goes along because her injuries are dangerous. So you rarely see that. Usually you'll see someone who gets completely cut up and still Terminator fighting their way against the killer. No, has to play it smart and knows that she's can only last in her condition so long. Well, she's lost a lot of blood, but her performance really sells it. The killer does a good job also in portraying his kind of this. I'm kind of 50-50 on the killer. If anything, I would say he's kind of a weak point, but at the same time, that also makes him more realistic, because he just kind of just comes across as a bit of a douchebag. But that's exactly the kind of person that would do this. So it makes it a very realistic villain. I will say he takes his mask off way too quick for my taste. Like it's a very minimalistic mask, but it's a like all the advertisements for it show him in the mask, and it's a very eye-grabbing thing. So seeing him in it for a little bit longer would have, I think, added something. But once he takes it off, it never comes back on. But it does allow him to fool some other people into thinking he's just a passerby. So I'm kind of 50-50 on him. But it's really only some minor complaints, because you do dislike this guy, and hope he gets what's coming to him for putting Maddie through all this. And with how quiet the movie is, particularly when you're in getting things from her perspective of not knowing where the killer is, when he's coming, or what's about to happen. Even having seen this once before, it's still a very tense film. I really enjoy Hush. I definitely have going to give this one a good 4 MacGuffins. So it's not a perfect film by any means. Like I said, the killer is realistic, which adds something, but not the most interesting of characters. And the fact that you never really get too much backstory on him, again, is a double-edged sword. It does make him curious, but at the same time, it's kind of a hard payoff. I will say there's one bit that also I'm a little torn on, that it's one of those things where the movie knew exactly what it was doing with her essentially causing a bit more of her own problems by trying to get attention, and it ends up, well, backfiring in a major way. But you feel her frustration by what happens, in particular, since she could have had a way out, but pretty much in her panic threw it down the drain, and it was frustrating, but it fit in the mood the movie was trying to be at that point, so good on ya. Alright, so, like I said, 4 MacGuffins. It's nothing, I can't put it all the way up to 5. It's only some of my highest tier ones are going to get up there, so, but it was a good one to start the month off with, and I was glad to see it again. So, considering I don't know what I'm going to be watching, getting a good one off the bat I'm picking is a good sign, because Tubi, Netflix have quite a wide variety of movies. Some of them good, a lot of them not. So we're going to be really into the crapshoot throughout the month. Well, I think that's all I got on this one. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's a very fresh take on the slasher genre, and definitely a tense horror thriller. Not too over the top in the gore, just but definitely some slasher violence. So if that's a turn off for you, it's definitely a bit in that area, but it's not like Nightmare on Elm Street or Texas Chainsaw Massacre levels of blood and gore. It does keep it to a more realistic depictions of things, but that might be more intense for some. I kind of put it like I mentioned The Strangers and You're Next. Those ones are good kind of comparisons to it. It's not like full I Spit on Your Grave or Hills Have Eyes or any of the more extreme ones. Yep, I think that's all I can ramble on about this one. So, welcome to October. We begin year 2. And, well, I hope you join me in talking to the void. Have a good night, and welcome back.